In a kingdom far from the edges of the known world, there was a princess. She lived in a mighty, prosperous palace surrounded by the wealth of the land and the love of her father, the king. The sun always seemed to shine upon her. The walls of the palace gleamed with gold, and every need was met. The king adored his daughter, guiding her with wisdom, patience, and grace. In return, she loved him deeply. He was her protector, her teacher, her guide. Yet, despite the luxury of her life, there was a hunger within her heart, a curiosity, a longing to know what lay beyond the ivory gates of the kingdom. She had heard stories of the world beyond the gates, of places where people lived differently, where the air smelled of mystery and danger. One night, driven by the restlessness in her soul, the princess decided to leave. She could no longer ignore the ache in her chest, the voice that whispered that there was something more, something she could not find within the stone walls of the palace. She ran. She ran through the streets of the city, past the guards who failed to notice her slip away. She ran through the darkened woods and into a world she had only heard of in rumors and whispers. At first, the adventure seemed thrilling. She met people who dazzled her with their carefree ways, politicians who promised her power, a drug dealer who lived above the law, and men who filled her with false promises of love. But the days turned to weeks, and the weeks turned to years. The sparkle of the world outside faded quickly. The politicians were corrupt, their promises empty. Friends began to turn their backs on her when she had nothing left to offer. She became lost, turning to the bottle for solace, only to find herself sinking deeper into despair. The men who once flattered her with sweet words stopped answering her calls. Her heart, once full of hope and dreams, was now broken and bruised. She wandered through the streets empty and hollow. She found herself in dark places, grief-stricken and alone, wishing she could turn back time. But she had squandered everything. Her wealth, her dignity, her joy, and worst of all, her connection to the one person who had truly loved her, her father. One evening in a warmly lit and elegant restaurant, she sat across from a diviner, a man who consulted with sea beings for his riches, amongst other things. A wise man who saw through the veil of time, far beyond what the human eye could see. He spoke of her future and the royal status she couldn't hide. Nobody else had seen it on this side, but he did. That night she couldn't sleep. The weight of her choices pressed down on her chest. She had wasted so many years chasing after fleeting things that had only left her empty. The longing to return back home became stronger than her fear of facing her father, stronger than her shame. The next morning, with nothing but the clothes on her back, she turned toward the kingdom she once knew. The gates that had once seemed so confining now appeared like the refuge she so desperately needed. As she neared the palace, her heart was heavy with guilt. How could she face him after everything? She had let him down, disregarded the love he had shown her. Then she saw him, her father, the king. Tears filled her eyes as she confessed, "I've done some terrible things. I've made such a mess of my life. I've wandered so far from the woman you raised me to be. I don't deserve your love. I don't deserve your forgiveness." He would have let her finish speaking, but none of it meant more than this: how much he loves her. He told her his love has not wavered, not once. Even before she was planted in her mother's womb, he loved her. When she was away, and even in eternity, he loves her. His love will never change. The king motioned for servants to bring her royal robes, linens to replace the regular clothes she had worn during her time away. They prepared a feast, and the fatted calf was slaughtered, for this was a moment of celebration, not shame. Her father, with a heart full of mercy, sat her down, a whispered reminder: "I love you. I loved you before you were even a thought, before your heart beat for the first time. And that love has never changed, not once. Nothing you do can take that away. Nothing." Then it was time to join their guests. The celebration continued late into the night, and by early morning, breakfast was served around the kitchen table. Her sisters gathered with intrigue, disbelief, and a deep desire to know. "What happened? What did you see?" "Sit. Let me tell you."